Good morning, it is 4 a.m. and I'm back in the office once again. The idea was that when the UK was nearing the end of lockdown that I would get more into doing what I was doing before, like posting gameplay and making, fairly regular YouTube videos. And the issue is twofold. Firstly, the UK is kind of in lockdown, kind of out of lockdown. We've got kind of these rules and then we've got kind of those rules. Not really sure what's going on. The best piece of advice I can give to anyone who's looking for a career in the NHS is make sure there's not a national pandemic on while you do it, because you will be super busy. Like Three Wise Men once said. Work sucks. Secondly, I don't know if it's like this for you guys, but October is super busy for me. A lot of birthdays in October. I guess it's because February's cold and boring and there's nothing to do, so you get a lot of birthdays in October. Anyway, a couple of things have happened since my last video when I was, putting out those Doom videos and whatnot. A really good thing happened and a really kind of not so good thing happened. First of all, starting with the good thing that happened was Factor 5 have got back together. Now, for those of you who don't know, Factor 5 are a small German developer who had a fairly illustrious career on the Amiga and the Super Nintendo, and also the GameCube as well, and the Nintendo 64. They put out some stellar games, including but not limited to the Turrican games, Star Wars tie-in games, and the Rebel Assault games, and the Rogue Squadron games. Fantastic developer, they're back together. And they also announced that they were putting out a port for Turrican 2 on the PlayStation 4. And you can be damn sure that I pre-ordered that. Like, absolutely no questions about it. In fact, I am so excited because I get to show this off, and I have been looking forward to doing a proper Turrican 2 in-depth. Maybe like my Flashback series, so maybe I'll do something with Turrican 2. Anyway, I'm super excited about that. That's some amazing news. The bad news is that my daily driver, Raspberry Pi, so I build Raspberry Pi cases and I like to make Raspberry Pi images and stuff like that, and I've had one for years. It's this one here. This is what I call the Wild Pi, and this is probably the most elaborate Raspberry Pi that I've built. It's actually two Raspberry Pis in one. I mean, it's got two of everything in there. So it's got two SD cards, it's got two LEDs on the side, like two drive lights. It's got a fan built in. It's got heat sinks built in. It's a really complicated, amount of stuff in a small box. I also made it modular in case it breaks. It broke. So one side was all like console games, NES, SNES, Mega Drive, stuff like that. The other side, by flicking this switch here, there you go, flicks over to the other SD card. The other SD card contains all my Amiga stuff. It's got like 27,000 ADF files, and it's died. The SD card is completely dead, so I've got to rebuild it. And it got me thinking that there are a lot of Amiga games. So not only Amiga games like ports, so you have straight ports, you have also HD remakes, sequels, and sort of spiritual sequels of Amiga games on modern consoles. Now, the two that I'm going to be focusing on are the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation Vita. I love this thing, by the way. The PlayStation Vita is an amazing, amazing piece of kit. So, with these two consoles, how many Amiga games, sequels, ports, and HD remakes can you play right now? It turns out there's a lot, like a lot. There are, this is not limited to, but I'm gonna quickly look at 15. So 15 games, and these are like games that cost basically nothing at this point, or a couple of quid. A lot of these, and the reason I picked these and not the Xbox or anything else, is because these two machines, a lot of these games that have appeared on PlayStation Plus. So you might already have these games and you don't realize it. they might already be in your library. But either way, if you've got one of these, and this thing sold so many, like the PlayStation 4 sold so many units that chances are you own one. Or if you own one of these and it's just sat in the back of a drawer, you could be playing some amazing Amiga games on that right now. Like real good classic Amiga games. So yeah, let's have a look. I'm going to quickly cut to video of me. I've got a load of captured footage and we're just going to run through it. And I'm going to show you basically a collection of amazing Amiga games that you can play if your Amiga Raspberry Pi is dead. Rest in peace.
See you at the crossroads, crossroads, see you at the crossroads.
Okay, I'm actually going to start out with a pair of games, and that is Pinball Dreams and Pinball Fantasies for the PlayStation Vita. Now, even though these are for the PlayStation Vita, they were actually part of what's known as PSP Minis. So what PSP Minis were a selection of very small file size, download-only titles for the PlayStation Portable. And that's why they can be quite hard to find on the store. But even though it was originally designed to be played on the PlayStation Portable, it's absolutely compatible with the PlayStation Vita. So Pinball Dreams and Pinball Fantasies were released for the Amiga by a developer called Digital Illusions Computer Entertainment. Now, you are probably still familiar with their work. They now go under the moniker of DICE, and they are that DICE that are knocking out Battlefront and Battlefield. So the thing that stood Pinball Dreams and Pinball Fantasies apart at the time was not only the incredibly smooth scrolling up and down the table, but also the tremendous physics. Like, up until this point, video pinball had never been as realistic as this, and it just blew everyone's minds. If you're into video pinball and you like, computer pinball, definitely give this a look. Okay, up next is an absolute Amiga classic, Alien Breed. Again for the PlayStation Vita. Now be aware there are 3 other Alien Breed games on the PlayStation Vita, and they are 3D kind of pseudo remakes, but this isn't. This is just called Alien Breed, and it is a 100% faithful recreation of Alien Breed and Alien Breed Special Edition, which was the later release on the Amiga, with a few bonuses. Also, this version has 12 extra levels. What you get with this is a really nicely drawn twin stick shooter version of that first Alien Breed and also Special Edition. It's a really nice looking game, but you can also switch to something called Classic Mode. Now, in Classic Mode, it takes those graphics all the way back to the original. You lose the twin stick shooter functionality of most modern top-down twin stick shooters, and what you're left with is basically what you had back on the Amiga if you had a 2-button joypad. What you have is a shoot button and a lock button, essentially. By holding the L1 button, you essentially just lock your direction, exactly like it was on the Amiga with the 2-button joypad. This is a fantastic game, and it holds up really well. If you love Alien Breed, definitely give this a go. Okay, let's talk about an absolute classic for the Amiga from the legends that were the Bitmap brothers. But before I talk about this at any length, I want you to listen to this loading screen. I mean, when I heard that noise, I was like, okay, I'm interested now. Again, this is another one of those games that, because it was a PSP Mini, was really hard to find on the store, not very well, marketed at all. And yet, and again, I don't want to be, out here pretending to be the absolute authority on Speedball II. I am not. I enjoyed the game, but I was terrible at it. However, this version isn't like that really weird 3D version that came out on the PlayStation, the PS1 a while ago. This feels and seems, at least to me, like like not a purist by any means, like a pretty decent, faithful recreation of that game. Like, again, I want to emphasize, I am not an authority on this. However, playing this just felt like that original game. Like, maybe there's people out there who'll tell you, you know, that this is wrong or that is wrong, but to me, it just felt exactly the same. All the violence is there. All of the controls are there. It's got new leagues. It's got new divisions. It's got challenges. It's got special achievements in the game for you to unlock, you know, new stadiums with and new teams with. It's just all round seems to be a really faithful recreation of a game that was incredibly popular on the Amiga. But if you want to hear me talk about a game which I am absolutely an authority in, that game is Lemmings. Now, Lemmings was a game made on the Amiga by a company called DMA Design, who you probably have heard about now. They go by the name of Rockstar. They made some game about cars. Anyway, the Lemmings on the Amiga was amazing. It was just the perfect puzzle platformer and one of those Moorish games where you just have to keep playing. So popular, in fact, that it was ported to everything, including the PlayStation Portable. Now, even though this is for the Vita, and you can absolutely play this on the Vita, this is the PlayStation Portable version. There is a PlayStation Vita version of Lemmings called Lemmings Touch. Do not play Lemmings Touch, it's terrible. The PlayStation Portable version, which you're looking at right here, is amazing. It has intuitive controls and a whole bunch of quality of life features, like a fast forward button, so you don't have to wait for all the lemmings to move slowly to the exit. You can just whiz it forward. It's a really, really nice addition. Now, even though the game looks 3D, it's not. Everything is actually sprite-based, except for those slightly blurred backgrounds. Those are 3D. So the game is still 2D and still has that same brilliant Lemmings feeling. The game no longer has a nuke button, and I'm not quite sure why. What it does have is 36 brand new levels. So 36 levels that have been made specifically for this title, and they're good. However, if you go down into the mode that says original, you have every single original level from that first game built into this. They are all there and they are all accounted for, and they are still incredibly good fun. Lemmings has held up. Okay, now this is a very strange one. If I had to make a list of all the Amiga games that would get a remake, this wouldn't be on it. Mostly because where you see here, it says, luckily our hero finds a magic potion floating in the river of despair. When this was originally released for the Amiga, that didn't say magic potion. That said Lucozade. What Superfrog was basically a branding deal for the Lucozade company. Now, if you don't live in the UK and don't know what Lucozade is, it's a glucose-based drink that was popular in like the 80s and 90s. Around about the time this HD remake was made, the only people drinking Lucozade was probably an England footballer by the name of John Barnes and pregnant women in maternity wards. That is it. No one else drinks Lucozade nowadays. So obviously the branding deal was removed, and what you're left with is Superfrog. Now, Superfrog has one problem, in that it was the Amiga's answer to Sonic the Hedgehog, so a very fast, very smooth scrolling platform game. The problem with that was that Sonic was cool. Sonic was cool then, and Sonic is kind of cool now. Superfrog was never cool. He wasn't cool then, and he wasn't cool around about the time that, you know, this remake came out. But it's just weird. It's just a weird thing that this exists. Why it exists, not really sure. There's no branding deal, but I'm kind of glad that it does. Okay, up next is possibly the most faithful to the ethos of the original Amiga game. So Stardust on the Amiga was a graphics showpiece. It was something to absolutely blow away anyone that looked at a game on the Amiga. And what it was an Asteroids ripoff, basically. I mean, there's no two ways about it. It was Asteroids. But what it did was incredible things with that graphics chip. Specifically Super Stardust, which came a little bit later than the original release and was designed for the AGA chipset Amigas. It looked incredible. Now, this is a game released for the PlayStation Vita, PlayStation 3, but also for the PlayStation 4's PlayStation VR. And what it is a remake of Stardust, or Super Stardust, by the company Housemarque. Now, Housemarque have stuck to what they did, or what the original did, all those years ago by making incredibly simple graphics showpieces with this and Resogun. Like, if you played Resogun on the PS4, same guys, and it is just absolutely the same thing. A game that you look at that system, whether it be the PlayStation Vita or the PS4 with Resogun or Super Stardust VR, and you look at it and it makes you go, wow, that's impressive. Like, think of all the particle effects, think of everything going on now. The original Stardust was no different. The first time I saw that running on the Amiga, specifically Super Stardust, it just blew me away for a game that's so simple and yet has so much going on and is that addictive. Like, that's the other thing they do. If you've ever played Housemarque's other game called Alienation or Dead Nation, same thing. Really, 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 really fun technical showpieces. Okay, the next in this list has got a couple of caveats. Firstly, I realised this wasn't exclusively for the Amiga. UFO Enemy Unknown came out on everything. It came out on the Atari, it was huge on the PC, it was huge everywhere. However, the UFO Enemy Unknown is one of those games that's synonymous with the Amiga. Like, if you owned an Amiga and you were really, really into gaming on the Amiga, chances are you played this. Secondly, the footage you're looking at here is actually from the PS3. However, as someone who has played both the PSP and the PS Vita version to death, I can pretty much say that both versions are basically identical. The only difference is that the PlayStation Vita version has kind of a wonky frame rate, but the frame rate on the PS3 is also, you know, not great either. So what this is a reimagining of that original Amiga title. It's still got all the base building, it's still got all of the permadeath on your crew, it's still got all of the espionage missions, the recovery missions, it's all there. What it has got, though, is a really nice coat of paint over the top. However, the underneath, the structure, is exactly the same as what it was all of those years ago on that top-down isometric view. This is a game that I cannot recommend highly enough, even if you never played the original. And in fact, almost especially if you never played the original. Because I did play the original, I was never good at it, and I always wanted to like it, but I never, ever, ever really got into it. And when this was announced, I was like, oh, cool, someone's remade UFO. Great, I'll give that a go. And I became addicted. Like, I have this game on the Vita, I've got it on the PS3, I've got actually 2 or 3 versions on the PS3, and I have the PS4 sequel. I cannot recommend this highly enough, even if the frame rate is a little bit wonky. Keeping with the themes of games that were ported to absolutely everything, and yet are somehow synonymous with the Amiga, Another World. Specifically this 20th anniversary edition, which is available for both the PS Vita and the PlayStation 4. What this is a technically remastered, resheened, re-aliased version of that classic game. What you can do is go into the options and turn all of that off. So what you're left with is the most cinematic Prince of Persia-like game ever. When this came out on the Amiga, there was nothing like it. It was a silky smooth experience, unlike anything anyone had ever seen. And this version, once you've turned off all the sort of aliasing and gone back to the original graphics with the original sound effects, is probably the best way to play this game. It's also cross-buy, so if you buy this game on one system, you know, either the PlayStation Vita or the PlayStation 4, you actually own both. I cannot recommend this game highly enough. At the time, it was the most silky smooth experience you've ever seen. Like, there was nothing like it. It just oozed cinematic quality from a company which would later go on to do a maybe even more cinematic game. And this version of that game is probably the smoothest it will ever look. This is an absolute classic, and you should definitely get a version. Followed up by, of course, Flashback, a game, again, that was ported to everything, but is absolutely synonymous with the Amiga. So the version that's on the PS4 has got a load of new graphics options. It's got new sound effects, although actually the classic sound effects are called 8-bit mode, which I never understood because the game never came out on 8-bit systems. Anyway, this new version for the PS4 has all the modern things like rewind and music sound, or it's got something called 1993 Classic Mode, which is the original game. So, oh, and also it has t-shirt color, but if you pick any color than white, if you pick red, then basically you're playing it wrong. Okay, so Flashback. Flashback for the Amiga, just like Another World before it, by the same developers, is one of the most cinematic games of its era, if not the most. It boasted 24 frames a second fluid animation for a game that is essentially, again, just Prince of Persia. The game is a mix of weird sci-fi, so you've got elements of Blade Runner and They Live, and what else is in there? Total Recall, quite obviously. The Director's Cut, which is the version included in the PS4 version, has these extra scenes, so the bit where he's looking over his shoulder on the bike, and a couple of the other scenes like the cannon leveling out, that's all basically in the Director's Cut. Director's Cut, think like a PC CD-ROM or Sega CD version. So, Flashback, again, there is so much Flashback content on my channel that I don't really want to go into Flashback now. If you want to see it, there's a playlist at the top. You can look at everything to do with Flashback. But this PS4 version is absolutely solid and 100% recommended. If you have a PS4, please, please, please take a look at Flashback. It's incredible. Okay, for this next entry, I need you to indulge me for just a minute. So, Day of the Tentacle was a PC CD-ROM game, which got a re-release on the PlayStation Vita and the PlayStation 4. Now, the new version, the remastered version, has been incredibly remastered. It looks amazing, and by pressing the touchpad, you can go right back to the way the game looked on the DOS CD-ROM way back in the day. And then by pressing the button again, it comes back to glorious HD redrawn graphics with new and enhanced sound. So why is it on my list of Amiga games? Well, I need to plug that game because it's amazing. But if you go into Weird Ed's room and click Use on the computer, the prequel to Day of the Tentacle, Maniac Mansion, which was a huge hit on the Amiga, is fully playable within Day of the Tentacle. So when you buy that game, you get the original game as well thrown in, not just a rolling demo, not a screensaver, the full game. Now, Maniac Mansion on the Amiga was huge. I mean, it was ported to everything. You can play it on the Nintendo, the original NES. You can play it on, obviously, DOS. You can play it on mobile phones. You can play it on anything now. But that original Amiga version was incredibly popular. And this port for the PlayStation Vita and the PlayStation 4 is insanely accurate to that. And when I mean, that's a good thing and also maybe not great, because put next to Day of the Tentacle Remastered, you can see how much a updated control scheme or updated sound effects or visuals goes a long way to enhancing a game, which you can always skip back to if you don't like. This hasn't got any of that. This is exactly as it was on the Amiga, for better or worse. I love Maniac Mansion, so for me, this is absolutely fantastic. Alright, the next entry on this list is right alongside Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2 as possibly the greatest remake in the very, very, very sense of the word. Shadow of the Beast was a technical showpiece. I mean, it was the definition of a technical showpiece on the Amiga. The artwork by Roger Dean on the box, the in-game graphics, the parallax scrolling, everything. The soundtrack was incredible. All of the elements of that game that made up that game were superb, except the gameplay. And a lot of Euro platformers and Euro games in general have that problem. They look incredible, they sound incredible, play like garbage. Unfortunately, Shadow of the Beast was one of those. It looked amazing, sounded amazing, didn't play very well at all. Now, this remake plays incredible. It's got this fantastic graphics that actually look like the Roger Dean box art. It's got gore. It's got this really weird dialogue system that you have to learn the dialogues of all the alien languages. It is the true definition of a remake in the best sense. What it also does is pay a lot of homage to the original 1989 game by allowing you to unlock all the artwork from that game, by allowing you to unlock the soundtrack from that game. It allows you to look at the history of that game. All of the story is laid out from the trilogy of games. I mean, Shadow of the Beast had 2 sequels. Shadow of the Beast 3 is maybe the best out of all of them. Shadow of the Beast 3 is really, really good, and it's a shame that that wasn't, included in here. What is included in this remake, though, as well as the remake itself being amazing, it also includes the complete game from 1989. It's all there. You have a couple of versions of it as well. Now, because, like I said, the gameplay was pretty rough, you have 2 versions of the game. One where it just plays the games as standard, and another one which is almost like you used to have on cracked versions of floppy disk back in the day. You could play an Infinite Lives version of Shadow of the Beast, the original 1989 Shadow of the Beast, exactly the same as if you booted up a trainer and just went. So I believe that this game is running on an Amiga emulator on the PS4, and the reason I say that is because there's maybe 1/16th frame of please insert disc 2 when you get to a certain point in the game. I think it's when you enter the castle. It quickly flashes something on the screen, and what I did was I captured the footage of me playing, looked at it back real slowly, and it says please insert disc 2. So this isn't a port, this is kind of like an emulated version of Shadow of the Beast running. That said, it's pretty solid. And even if you buy this for the original Shadow of the Beast, I mean, there are fans of Shadow of the Beast out there, and if you are one of those people, great, you know what I mean? But I would still, even if you've never heard of Shadow of the Beast, I would still highly recommend buying this purely for the remake. It is so, so good. Definitely give it a go. Okay, now this next entry is going to raise a lot of eyebrows, but stick with me on this one. So, Zombie, or Zombie U, as it was originally called, was a launch title for the Nintendo Wii U, which then years later got ported to the PS4, but what most people don't realise is it's actually a remake for a game that not only came out on the Amiga, but also the, Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64, even the ZX Spectrum. It is, however, incredibly close to the first game, with a few little differences. So the first game was a first-person game, it was a survival game, it was set in a shopping mall where you had to find parts to a helicopter and escape, like, Day of the Dead, basically. And you had 4 characters. What they did with this remake is instead of having 4 characters, they've turned it into a roguelike. So every time you play the game, you're assigned a random civilian with different gender or, nationality, anything. When that person dies, they are then dead and replaced by a new random person. So it stayed very true to the original game in that sense. It's also first person. You're also hunting for parts, trying to escape. The only difference is instead of a shopping mall, you're now knocking about in East London, in the London Underground and round Brick Lane and Shadwell, places like that. I wanted to include it in this list, not only because it is a remake, but also I genuinely like it and I think more people should play it. Okay, so Worms. I mean, it's Worms. You know Worms, right? Of course you know Worms. Worms is on everything. It's on every console that's ever existed. It's on every system. It is the only game that Team 17 have ever published that they seem to have stuck with. And I think they'll probably keep making Worms games until the sun burns out. So, obviously it had to be on this list because the original Worms game, the first one on the Amiga, was insanely popular. And for good reason. It had that thing, that one more game multiplayer. Like, certain games had that, like Speedball and Sensible Soccer and things like that. But there's quantifiable one more game, just one more game, hunched over a keyboard, crowded round a little 14-inch monitor element to Worms. It was addictive, it was multiplayer, and it caused arguments. It was perfect. Now, why did I pick this version, specifically Worms Battlegrounds for the PS4? The reason I picked this version is because it has pretty much all the content that every Worms game up until this point had. Plus, it was also on PlayStation Plus. So if you subscribe to PS Plus, chances are this is already in your library, and you should definitely play it just to get that one more game hit of multiplayer. In keeping with the theme of multiplayer Amiga games that were designed to cause arguments, we now have Micro Machines World Series on the PS4, which now includes
Welcome to Micro Machines!
Look, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't know why Brian Blessed is in this Micro Machine remake for the PS4. In fact, I don't even think Brian Blessed knows why Brian Blessed is in this Micro Machines remake for the PS4. But let's be honest, I'm glad he is. What I'm not too sure about being added to this version of Micro Machines is the branding. So obviously, you're seeing a tie-in with G.I. Joe. So you've got the G.I. Joe tank and the Cobra Command tank added into the game. Whatever, that's just 2 vehicles in a 12 vehicle selection. That's not that bad. What is slightly more egregious is the tie-in with Nerf, the toy gun manufacturer. There are 5 Nerf logos on the screen right now. It's a little bit egregious. However, if you can get over that, what you're left with is some insanely good, fun throwbacks to the Amiga multiplayer mayhem. So, single screen, all in it together, trying to do over your mates, being tiny little cars on top of tabletops. It's fantastic, it's fun, and it's a hell of a throwback. Now, because this is my list and I can end it pretty much any way I want, I'm going to end it with a game that never even saw the Amiga. This is Gunlord, or Gunlord X in this case. It was originally released for the Neo Geo and the Dreamcast back in 2012. So, why on earth is it on a list of Amiga games that can be played on modern consoles? Well, I mean, look at it. It's Turrican 2. Like, this is the sequel to a game that already has sequels. Like, this is more of a sequel to Turrican 2 than Turrican 3. This is more of a sequel to Turrican 2 than Mega Turrican or Super Turrican. It is the Amiga game that never was. It's a game that, by all intents and purposes, is a high-definition remake of an Amiga game that never came out. Now, like I said at the beginning of this video, when this was originally released for the PlayStation 4 at the end of last year, Factor 5 were gone. Like, they were never coming back, and Turrican 2 was never getting a console release. Since then, Factor 5 have now obviously come back together, and Turrican 2 is slated to come out on the PS4. But until then, I would highly recommend getting a copy of Gunlord X. It is a Turrican fan game made by Turrican fans. This is just pure, unadulterated joy for anyone that has ever enjoyed a Turrican game, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. The music, the graphics, the controls, it's all of there. This is Turrican 2 that never was. Alright, hold up a minute. Now, I had already rendered this video and I was uploading it and everything was going great until Sony decided to put a bullet in it. So yeah, what they're doing is they're ending what they call the support for legacy consoles on the mobile phone app and also the web store as well. Now, up until the 21st on the web store and the 28th on the app store, you still can buy these PS Vita games. Unfortunately, after that, you can't buy them on those. However, you can still buy them on the console itself. So if you have the PS Vita and you want to play these games, you still totally can using the store on the machine.